It was a foggy, unfriendly, and damp March evening in the suburbs of Lancaster. It had been drizzling since early morning, and the narrow streets looked almost deserted. A light burned quietly in one of the old brick houses on the outskirts of town. The house belonged to Alex Randall, a former policeman who had moved here after retiring, hoping to find peace. But in recent weeks, the peace had been shattered by the strange disappearance of his childhood friend, James Walker. Alex, sitting in his chair by the window, thoughtfully looked at the wet road. He was haunted by the feeling that his friend had not just disappeared, but was in serious trouble. The police considered James's disappearance a routine case. An adult could leave without warning. But Alex did not believe in this version. He had known James all his life, he would never leave without leaving even a note. Having collected his thoughts, Alex decided to start his own investigation. The first step was to figure out who James had been communicating with in recent months. Alex pulled out an old leather notebook that he always kept in his desk drawer. Ever since his police days, he had taken to writing down any significant conversations or events that might come in handy. He opened the notebook and glanced at the latest entries about James. Too many weird things, he muttered under his breath. James had mentioned problems in the family several times over the past 6 months. His wife, Lisa, had become cold and distant. At first, Alex thought it was a typical relationship crisis that many couples are subject to. But James claimed that something had changed. Lisa had suddenly started staying late at work, regularly going away for the weekend, to a friend's, and, strangest of all, she was changing her wardrobe more often. What a cliché, Alex chuckled, going through the notes. If that's really the case, then it's a classic story of betrayal. He flipped through several pages until he came across an entry from 3 weeks ago. James suspects that Lisa is cheating on him. He thinks that she is having an affair with one of her colleagues. He asked to find out something about her boss, Thomas Evans. At the time, Alex took it as another fit of jealousy on the part of his friend. He didn't pay any attention to it, deciding that it was the little things of family life. However, now this detail seemed extremely important. Thomas Evans. Alex said, getting up from his chair. He remembered this man, a typical smug careerist with expensive suits, impeccable hair styling and an impudent expression. It was precisely such types who often became the culprits of divorces. Alex decided he would start by visiting Lisa. Her behavior could provide a clue to James's disappearance. If this is all because of betrayal, then someone here is hiding something. He pulled on his coat, tucked the notebook into his inside pocket, and walked out into the rainy night. There were answers ahead, but he sensed that those answers might be far more unpleasant than he had expected. Alex drove to Lisa's house. The rain had gotten heavier, and the windshield wipers on his old Chevy were struggling to keep up with the torrent of water, but he didn't care. He knew all too well that personal motives were often behind disappearances. If James was missing because of some kind of love triangle, Alex had to find out. Pulling up to a familiar one-story house, he parked at the curb and turned off the engine. The windows were lit, and the light from the TV flickered in the living room. Alex got out of the car, quickly crossed the wet path and knocked on the door. A minute later, footsteps were heard, and Lisa opened the door. Her appearance immediately alerted Alex. Although she looked tired, there was not a shadow of worry on her face. "Oh, Alex. What are you doing here?" she asked in surprise, pretending to smile. "Good evening, Lisa. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to talk about James. May I come in?" His voice was even, but his gaze studied her reaction. Lisa hesitated a little, as if considering whether to let him in, but still stepped aside. "Sure, come in." Alex walked into the house, shook the drops off his coat and looked around. Everything looked as usual, but there was tension in the air. He sat down in a chair. Lisa sat opposite him, nervously adjusting her hair. "Did you find out anything?" she asked with feigned excitement in her voice. "Nothing concrete yet. But I need to clarify something. James said that you had been having problems lately. He suspected that you were cheating on him. Is that true? The question was as direct as a blow, and Lisa didn't immediately know what to answer. Her face darkened, and she crossed her arms over her chest. What? This is nonsense. Yes, we argued, but that's normal for any family. Then why was he so sure you had someone? Alex didn't mean to press, but his tone made it clear that excuses weren't going to help. Who's Thomas Evans? Thomas's name caused Lisa to twitch her eyelids ever so slightly. She tried to hide it, but Alex noticed. Thomas is my boss, nothing more. Yes, he sometimes walks me home, but that's part of the job. Don't you think that Alex leaned forward, interrupting her. I think you're lying to me, Lisa. And if you're hiding something, it's better to tell me now than later, when it's too late. James didn't just disappear. If you were with someone, that might explain where he went. Lisa looked away, clearly struggling with herself. Then, sighing heavily, she said. Yes, there was something between Thomas and me. But it wasn't what you think. James and I hadn't spoken much in months. I was tired of feeling forgotten. Thomas was there at the right time. And the last time you saw James? Alex changed the subject abruptly, feeling like he was on to something important. 2 days ago. He left for work this morning and no one has seen him since. Lisa hesitated, but then added, Thomas doesn't know anything about this, I asked. Alex didn't believe her. There was something unsaid about all this. He decided that his next step would be to talk to Thomas Evans himself. Okay, Lisa. I won't say anything for now. But if you remember anything, call me right away. The sooner I find out the truth, the better the chances of finding James alive. With these words he stood up and headed for the exit. Lisa watched him go, but said nothing. Closing the door behind him, Alex got back into the car and thought. Evans. I wonder what you'll tell me. He thought, started the engine and drove out onto the road. Alex knew he had to be extremely careful from now on. Thomas Evans wasn't just Lisa's boss, he could be a key figure in James's disappearance. As the car drove through the wet streets, Alex analyzed everything he had learned. Lisa was clearly nervous, but she tried to pretend that everything was under control. She is not stupid, she knows that her involvement in her husband's disappearance could come to light. Thomas. If he really was her lover, then perhaps he wanted to get rid of James as a problem. Pulling up to the office where Lisa worked, Alex parked in front of the building. It was late, but a light was on in one of the offices on the second floor. Alex got out of the car, turned up the collar of his coat, and headed toward the entrance. The office doors were closed, but a security guard, a gray-haired man with an indifferent expression, soon answered the doorbell. How can I help you? He asked, lazily tearing himself away from the newspaper. I need Thomas Evans. Is he still there? Alex looked at the guard in a way that immediately made him understand that there was no point in arguing. Yes, he's upstairs. But, you know, it's late. The guard began, but Alex, without waiting for the end of the sentence, silently walked past, heading for the stairs. As he climbed to the second floor, he saw a door with a sign that read, Thomas Evans, CEO. Light from the office poured through the frosted glass, and muffled footsteps could be heard. Alex knocked twice, received no answer, opened the door, and walked in. Thomas stood by the window, holding a glass of whiskey in his hand. He raised an eyebrow in surprise when he saw Alex, but quickly pulled himself together. Randall, he asked with cool politeness, setting his glass down on the table. What a surprise. What brings you here at this hour? Conversation, Evans. I assume you already know that James has disappeared. I know. Lisa told me. But, to be honest, I don't understand what this has to do with me. Thomas sat down at the table and pointed to the chair opposite. Sit down. Alex ignored the invitation and continued to stand, glaring at his interlocutor. "That's a lie," he answered calmly. "Yes, I gave Lisa rides sometimes, yes, we became friends. But nothing more. You know how people love to gossip." "Gossip? Okay, then why didn't you tell the police that you saw James on the day he disappeared?" Thomas tensed slightly, but still remained calm. "Why should I do that? He came to see me about some work, we talked for a while, and then he left. That was in the morning, and I never saw him again." Thomas paused, then added, "Look, Alex, I understand that you're worried about your friend. But accusing me without evidence is a bit much, don't you think?" Alex noticed that Evan's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for the glass, a sign that his interlocutor was nervous despite his outward calm. "Last question, what did you talk about with James?" Alex stepped closer, his voice becoming harsher. "About work. About money. What else can we talk about?" Thomas leaned back in his chair. "If that's all you wanted to know, then I think our conversation is over." Alex realized that he would not achieve anything more now. But he was not going to leave just like that. "That's not all, Evans. If I find out you lied to me, believe me, you won't like what happens next." With that, Alex turned and walked out of the office. As he walked down the stairs, he went over every word Thomas had said in his head. His intuition told him Evans was hiding something. All he had to do was find some proof. Back in the car, Alex took out his phone and dialed the number of his old friend, Peter Welsh, a private detective with whom he had worked many times before. "Hi, Pete. I need your help. I want to know everything about Thomas Evans, who he hangs out with, where he goes, if he has any dark deeds." "Got it, Alex. Give me a couple of days." Alex hung up his phone and thought for a moment. This case was getting more and more complicated. He needed to act fast before the trail went cold. The next step was to check Evans' alibi and find out where he had been the night James had disappeared. Alex felt he was getting closer to solving the mystery, but he knew that every step he took could be dangerous. 2 days later, Alex received a call from Peter Welch. "Alex, I have something. Evans is clearly not who he claims to be." "Details?" Alex's voice sounded impatient. "He has a country house near Lake Berkshire. An interesting coincidence, this is where James's phone signal was last recorded. Moreover, I checked the surveillance footage, Evans was in this area on the evening of his disappearance." "So he lied." "Great, Pete. I need the exact coordinates of this house." Alex felt anger boiling inside. Peter dictated the address, and Alex immediately headed towards the lake. An hour and a half later, he was there. Thomas's house stood on the outskirts, surrounded by thick pine trees, making it almost invisible from the road. Alex parked a distance away so as not to attract attention, and slowly approached the house, trying not to make noise. The light inside was not on, but the tire tracks on the wet ground showed that someone had recently been there. He walked around the perimeter of the house and noticed a slightly open basement door. Alex crouched down, took out a flashlight and carefully peered inside. The stairs led down into the darkness. There were no sounds, but Alex knew that this basement could be the key to everything. Going downstairs, he saw an old storage room. Along the walls there were shelves with tools and household junk. But this was not what caught his attention. In the corner there was a massive metal box. Alex came closer and noticed that the lock on it was torn off. Opening the lid with difficulty, he saw a black bag inside. The bag was filled with wads of cash and several folders of documents. Alex picked up one of the folders and leafed through the contents. They were copies of Evans's company contracts, but what surprised him most was that James's name was on them. The contracts were clearly fraudulent, and James seemed to be able to find out about it. "So James knew something he shouldn't have known," Alex whispered. At that moment, he heard a quiet sound from behind. Someone was coming down the stairs. Alex quickly put the documents back in his bag, took out his phone and managed to send Peter a message with the coordinates before he turned around and pointed the flashlight at the stairs. Thomas Evans stood on the top step, pistol in hand, his face expression calm and confident, his eyes clearly enjoying the moment. "Knew you'd show up here, Randall," he said mockingly. "You're too stubborn to leave things as they are." "Did you kill James?" Alex asked coldly, trying not to show the tension building inside. Thomas just chuckled, narrowing his eyes slightly. "It wasn't my idea. James was a problem. He found out about our business and he could tell everything. But I swear, I didn't mean to kill him. It was all Lisa. She was afraid that he would leave her and everything would fall apart." Alex felt his insides turn over. Lisa was his first love, his childhood friend. And now she could be involved in her husband's disappearance. "Where is he?" Alex took a step forward. "What did you do with him?" "Oh, you try so hard," Thomas continued to speak slowly, savoring each word. "Aren't you really tired of chasing Lisa all these years? You still hope that she'll choose you, right? Even after she dumped you because you turned out to be, how can I put it?" He chuckled, as if remembering something funny, unsatisfactory in bed. Thomas's words cut Alex harder than any blow. He tensed up, but tried to keep his composure. "Oh, yeah, Lisa told me all about it," Thomas continued, enjoying the reaction. "She said how disappointed she was in you because you were too boring, too predictable, too," he paused, savoring the moment, inept. "Then she met James, and, well, you know how it all turned out. And you just stayed a friend. A funny role, don't you think? The friend who's always there, always willing to help, but who no one takes seriously." Alex felt a wave of anger rise inside him. Thomas's words had revived an old pain he had long tried to forget. Yes, Lisa had been his first love. Yes, their relationship had ended exactly as Thomas had said. She had left for James because she had found Alex not passionate enough, not interesting enough. But he had never held a grudge against her, had tried to maintain their friendship, and now it was all turning into a bitter mockery. "Finished?" Alex asked dryly, trying not to show his emotions. "Not really," Thomas replied, lowering the gun a little, as if relaxing. "It's just funny how you still carry around this love of yours for Lisa. Do you think she'd choose you if I disappeared? Don't flatter yourself, Randall. She's always chosen those who can give her more. James was next after you, and now, guess who? Me. Because I can give her what you never could, money, passion, and pleasure." Alex felt his fists clench. Thomas was enjoying his power over the situation, over every word he used to humiliate Alex. But Alex knew that he couldn't lose control now. "I'm asking you for the last time, Thomas. Where is James?" Alex's voice was firm, but there was a subtle note of threat in it. "Why do you need him? Do you think that if you save him, Lisa will suddenly look at you again?" Thomas smirked. She wanted to get rid of him herself. Her love for him faded as quickly as it once did for you. You're just next in line. That was the last straw. Alex wasn't going to listen anymore. He lunged forward, knocking the gun out of Thomas's hands, and they fell together onto the cold concrete floor. Thomas was tough, but Alex was stronger. He pinned him to the floor, holding him by the throat. "Where is James?" he growled, squeezing his fingers tighter. Thomas wheezed, trying to break free. His face began to turn red, and realizing he had no choice, he croaked. "In the barn, behind the house." Lisa wanted to hide him there until she decided what to do. Alex let go of him, stood up and grabbed the gun. Thomas remained lying there, choking and coughing. "If you lied," Alex said, pointing the gun at him, "I'm coming back and you're not going to like it." With that, he ran out of the basement and headed for the barn. His heart was pounding. He tried not to think about Lisa, about her betrayal, about how she used all the men in her life. The main thing now was to find James and save his friend. Alex realized there was no time. Leaving Evans tied up in the basement, he ran out of the house and to the barn. Been kept there for several days without food and water. Alex sat his friend down on the ground and quickly pulled a flask of water out of his pocket. Drink. You need to come to your senses, he said quietly, looking around. The barn was shaded by thick pine trees, and there was a small abandoned dock nearby. The faint sound of sirens could be heard in the distance, indicating that Peter had already called the police. Alex knew he had only a few minutes before Evan's men arrived, or Lisa, if she was involved. How did you get here? James asked hoarsely, taking a few sips of water. It's a long story. The main thing is that you're alive. Alex put his hand on his friend's shoulder. What happened? Why did they decide to kill you? James hesitated, as if collecting his thoughts, and then spoke. I found out that Thomas and Lisa were running some kind of big scam. Evan's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he found a way to siphon off money through shell companies. When I found the documents confirming this, I was going to go to the police. But Lisa. He sighed heavily. She betrayed me, Alex. She said that she loved Thomas and was ready to do anything just to maintain a relationship with him. Alex felt a cold lump in his chest. That explained everything. Lisa really had a hand in James's disappearance, and perhaps even in the attempted murder. So she knew you were here. Alex muttered. And she was trying to confuse me all this time. The low growl of an engine pulled them out of their short conversation. Alex looked up sharply and saw a black SUV pull up to the house. The headlights illuminated the wet ground, and two men in dark jackets got out. Problems, Alex said shortly, helping James to his feet. We need to get out of here. He looked around and noticed an old boat tied to the dock. The only way to escape quickly was to sail away across the lake. Supporting James, he headed towards the boat, trying to stay in the shadows of the trees. They reached the pier with difficulty. Alex quickly untied the boat, sat James down on the bench and took the oars in his hands. The boat slowly sailed away from the shore, disappearing into the fog. Do you think they saw us? James whispered, looking around. Not yet, but it's a matter of time, Alex replied, peering intently at the shore. He saw one of the men heading toward the barn, while the other remained by the car, holding a radio in his hands. Suddenly a loud voice was heard from behind. Hey, they're leaving by water. Alex glanced back sharply. One of Evan's men had spotted them and was already aiming his pistol. Without wasting time, Alex pulled hard on the oars, and the boat began to glide faster across the surface of the water. The first shot was a muffled sound. The bullet went into the water a few meters away from them. Hold on, James. Alex shouted, continuing to paddle with all his might. The sirens were getting closer. Evan's men fired several more shots in their direction, but the bullets only raised spray around the boat. Alex knew that the police were close, and that the pursuers would soon disappear. A few minutes later the shooting stopped and Alex finally saw the flashing lights of police cars on the other side of the river. The boat hit the rocks softly and Alex helped James get out onto the shore. Two officers immediately ran up to them. Are you okay? One of them asked, looking at both men. Now yes, Alex exhaled heavily. There are still people left in Evan's house. Detain them, they are armed. The police immediately sent several cars to the mansion, and one of the officers stayed with Alex and James to take statements. Thank you for coming for me, Alex. If it weren't for you, they would have definitely killed me. James smiled weakly, still coming to his senses. I promised myself that I would find you, no matter what it took, Alex replied, feeling the tension finally release from him. But that wasn't all. He knew he had to talk to Lisa now, who would have to choose between handing Thomas over and saving herself, or going down with him. Alex looked at the dark sky above the lake and thought that this was not the end of the story. The real denouement was just beginning. After a long and grueling interrogation at the police station, Alex finally returned home. He felt tired, but he knew he couldn't relax. The most difficult conversation was ahead of him. The police had detained Evan's men, but Lisa was still at large. Alex knew she still had a chance to get out of this if she turned in Thomas and confirmed her role as a victim of circumstances. However, Alex wanted to hear her version in person. The next morning, Alex went to Lisa's house. He wasn't ready for sweet talk or attempts at justification. He needed to hear the truth, even if it was bitter. When he knocked, the door opened almost immediately. Lisa was clearly expecting his visit. Her face was pale, her eyes were red, but this did not evoke sympathy or pity in Alex. He knew Lisa too well to believe in her tears. "We need to talk," he said firmly, walking inside without invitation. Lisa didn't answer, silently closed the door behind him and headed into the living room. Alex followed her, looking around. There was an unfinished cup of coffee on the table, a pack of cigarettes lying next to it. He was surprised. Lisa had never smoked before. It was a clear sign that things had gone further than he could have imagined. He sat down across from her, crossing his arms over his chest. Lisa took the seat across from him, trying to maintain the appearance of calm, but her tense hands, fidgeting with the rim of her coffee cup, betrayed her true state. "Why did you do this, Lisa?" Alex began. His voice was cold, without any trace of the warmth that had once connected them. "You knew Thomas was cheating on James. What's more, you helped him get rid of his own husband." Lisa looked up at him, a spark of anger flashing in her eyes. But instead of answering, she just shrugged, pretending that it was all a trifle. "You knew James could tell about Thomas's machinations. And instead of protecting him, you sided with the man who wanted to kill him." Alex clenched his fists tighter and tighter. Lisa chuckled mockingly, as if Alex had said something absurd. "Alex, you've never understood anything," she said, leaning forward. "Are you still playing the hero? Do you think you can save anyone? Wake up, it's James's own fault for meddling in something that wasn't his business. He's a weakling, just like you. Always has been." Alex stood up abruptly, anger boiling inside him, but he held it in, not wanting to give Lisa the opportunity to manipulate his emotions. "Left with nothing?" he asked coldly. "You betrayed the man who loved you for some money and lies. James almost died because of you. Understand that." Lisa, as if not hearing his words, continued speaking, now with obvious pleasure. "Do you know why I left you then, Alex? Because you were always so pathetic. Too proper. Too boring. It was impossible to feel alive with you. That's why I chose James, and then Thomas. At least they understood what passion meant. And you? You were always afraid to do something wrong, afraid to take risks, afraid of life." Her words pierced Alex like sharp needles. He saw a completely different Lisa before him, not the girl he once loved, but a cold and cynical woman for whom other people's lives meant less than her own comfort. "You didn't mean for it to go this far." Alex tried his best to remain calm, even though everything inside was seething. "That's a lie. You knew what you were getting into. You knew Thomas wanted James out, but you didn't care as long as it didn't affect you personally." Lisa shrugged and suddenly smiled, tilting her head to the side. "Aren't you tired of being such a proper detective? Do you think that saving James will change anything? He'll still come back to me as soon as everything settles down. Do you know why? Because without me, he's nothing. Just like you were nothing when I left you." Alex couldn't take it anymore. He took a step forward, causing Lisa to lean back slightly. Her smug expression changed to one of wariness. "You may think you've won, Lisa. But sooner or later the truth will come out. And when it does, you'll be left alone. Thomas won't save you, and James will never come back." He turned and headed for the exit. Lisa remained sitting in the chair, no longer confident. Her smile disappeared, and fear flashed in her eyes. She realized that the situation was out of her control. When Alex opened the door, he turned around one last time. You lost not only James, but yourself. And one day you will have to pay for all of this. Silent, broken only by her ragged breathing. If you want to save yourself, Lisa, Alex spoke again, lowering his voice, you have only one way out, hand over Thomas and tell the police the whole truth. Maybe then you'll have a chance not to lose everything completely. What will happen to me? She whispered, without raising her eyes. It depends only on you. If you turn in Thomas, you'll get a leniency. If you try to wriggle out of it, you'll be responsible for everything just like he is. Lisa sat silently, trying to make a decision. Alex could see that there was a struggle going on in her head. Fear for her own life was fighting with the desire to save herself at any cost. Finally, she looked up and said quietly, I'll tell everything. I'll tell the police. Alex nodded. Okay. I'll contact the detective and you'll tell me everything. He headed for the exit, feeling that this was only part of the denouement. Lisa had agreed, but that didn't mean it would be over. Thomas was a powerful man, and if he realized that Lisa was ready to testify against him, he would do everything to eliminate her. As Alex left the house and got into the car, he thought about what would happen next. Ahead of them was a trial, a long investigation, but the main thing was that now James had a chance to start his life anew, without Lisa, without lies and betrayal. But Alex didn't feel satisfied. He knew this story would leave scars, for James, for Lisa, and even for himself. Sometimes even winning a game like this doesn't bring relief. A week later, Thomas was arrested. Lisa gave detailed testimony about his machinations and plans to get rid of James. The trial lasted several months, but in the end, Thomas received an impressive sentence, and Lisa got off with a minimum sentence for cooperating with the investigation. James, having recovered from the shock, decided to leave the city. Alex came to see him off. What next? Alex asked as James closed the trunk of his car. I'll start from scratch, James smiled weakly. Thank you, Alex. Without you, I wouldn't be here. Alex patted him on the shoulder. Take care of yourself, James. And remember, not everyone can be trusted, even those you love. James nodded, got into the car and drove off slowly. Alex watched him until the car disappeared around the corner. Now it was really over. Or at least he wanted to believe it was. James arrived in a small coastal town called Kingsville. After everything that had happened, he needed a fresh start, a place where he could turn over a new leaf in his life and forget about the past. Kingsville turned out to be just that, quiet streets, sea air and friendly people. He rented a small apartment on the top floor of an old house overlooking the harbor and got a job at a local antiques shop. A few months passed, and life gradually improved. James began to regain his zest for life. Every day he walked along the beach, finding joy in little things he had never thought about before, the silence in the morning, the smell of the sea, the sunbeams breaking through the clouds. One evening, while walking into a local cafe, James noticed a girl behind the bar. She had her back to him, clearing away glasses, and her dark hair, pulled back into a messy bun, looked golden in the lamplight. When she turned around, their eyes met. Good evening, she smiled, noticing his attention. What would you like to order? Coffee, black, please, James answered a little confused, feeling something inside him come to life after long months of apathy. The girl quickly prepared the order and placed the cup in front of him. Are you new here? She asked, trying to start a conversation. Yes, a couple of months ago. Decided to start a new life, James answered honestly, feeling that there was no need to pretend with this girl. I see. Kingsville is a great place for a new start, she nodded and extended her hand. I'm Emily. James, he replied, squeezing her warm hand. From that evening onwards, James became a frequent guest at the cafe. Every time he and Emily exchanged a few phrases, and gradually it turned into real conversations. It turned out that Emily was born and raised in Kingsville, but dreamed of moving to a big city to become an artist. However, life decreed otherwise. After the death of her parents, she had to stay and take over the family business, the cafe. James felt that every conversation with Emily healed his soul. She was not just a nice conversationalist, but a person who saw the world from its bright side, despite the difficulties. A few weeks later, they started dating. James felt capable of deep feelings again, despite his past wounds. Emily helped him believe in people, believe in himself. Together, they walked along the embankment, had picnics on the beach, and talked for a long time about everything. One day, sitting on the sand under the starry sky, Emily asked, "James, why did you come here? You have something heavy on your shoulders, I can see it in your eyes." James thought about it. He didn't want to remember the past, but with Emily he felt he could be honest. "Yes, it was hard. I was betrayed. Those I trusted the most," he paused, trying to find the words. "I had to leave everything and start over." Emily touched his hand gently. "I don't know what you've been through, but I know one thing, you're a good person. And if that hadn't happened, we would never have met." These words touched something deep within James. He realized that the past, however difficult it had been, was truly behind him. Now he had a new life and perhaps a chance at happiness. The next months passed like a fairy tale. James helped Emily in the cafe, and in the evenings they walked along the beach together or watched the sunset. He felt that he had finally found peace and the love he had been looking for a long time. One evening, James decided to propose to Emily. He chose a special place for this, their favorite cliff above the sea, which offered a stunning view of the sunset. "Emily," he began as the sun sank below the horizon and the sea turned pink and orange. "You changed my life. You gave me hope when I had none. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring with a small but elegant diamond. "Will you marry me?" Emily froze for a moment, and then her eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Yes, James. Yes," she cried, throwing her arms around his neck. A year later, they were married. James opened a small art gallery with Emily next to the cafe, where she could display her work. Their life was simple but meaningful. They lived each day with joy and gratitude for what they had. Sometimes James thought about the past, but now it didn't hurt him. He knew that he had made the right choice in leaving his old life. After all, it was here, in Kingsville, that he had found his true love and started everything from scratch.